Have you ever honestly thought about defining success? No, not like that. I mean a real definition, one that you can write down, one with a real meaning, as in, what is success for you? If success is what you're striving for, wouldn't it be a great idea to know exactly what it is that you're striving for? Webster says that success is the accomplishment of an aim or purpose. However, I think we humans tend to overcomplicate that. We want it to be more than that. All of us want to be successful, so how come we don't define exactly what it is that we're chasing? Sounds like a gross oversight if you ask me. And let me say this, if you don't define it for you, someone else will, or maybe already has. And instead of having some sort of concrete, achievable meaning, it will be like a mirage of a desert oasis, something so beautiful, just out of reach, something you move towards, but in the end can't capture because it's not really there. So let's dig deeper. What is success, and how do you get it? I want to start by pressing rewind. I want to go back almost to the beginning of your life. If you can remember back to kindergarten, maybe you can recall some of the things that you experienced. Maybe you had some number exercises like counting to 100 on paper. You probably went through the alphabet and were taught the beginnings of reading and writing. And somewhere along that year, the teacher said something like this: "Pay attention, kids, these are skills you're going to need in the first grade." Totally harmless, right? I mean, it's actually true. But at that moment, at an early age, we fixed our eyes on what is next. First grade. Because once we get there, we'll be a big boy or a big girl. And when we get there to first grade, we continue on our education in language, math, listening, taking turns, increasing our social skills as best we can. And somewhere along that year, we hear the words, "These are skills you will need for the second grade." And on it goes once we get to second grade. Phonics, comprehension, new math skills, and you already know what I'm going to say next. Yes, I'm going to say that there is something next. And we continue on, constantly preparing for what's next. Our eyes always fixed on somewhere we're not. We may be in 5th grade, but our eyes are on 6th grade. Because once we get there, the phase of life we're really waiting for can now begin. What's next? Where am I trying to go that I am not currently? Do you see the pattern? I wish it ended there, but unfortunately this pattern of behavior has been all but hammered into our brain, hardwiring our synapses to a pattern that will be tough to break down the road. Because you know in middle school, your focus shifts on getting to high school. And once you're there, you're again focused on what's next. Maybe college, university, marriage, or some career you have your eyes on. What's next? Where can I go that I am not currently? Progress. It's such a double-edged sword. We all but foam at the mouth for the progress that is defined somewhere around us, outside of us. Standing in our yard, but admiring our neighbors. Something needs to change. There has to be a next, a newer, a bigger, a different. Because deep down, so many of us actually believe the grass is greener on the other side. And can you even blame us? Most of us were taught for 12 to 16 years straight during the most multiple time in our life that where we're really going is someplace that is next, somewhere we're not currently. Never mind the fact that during much of these younger, soft as clay years, we have the endless supply of the world's incredibly strong inputs around us. Celebrity, beauty, identity, escape, money, possession, pouring into us from a multitude of screens and sources around us, present in nearly every one of the 7,000 advertisements that each one of us see every single day. It's as if we have no choice but to drink in what the world has to say from 50 fire hydrants to swallow as much as we can, even though it's way too much for us to consume. But we try. We're just trying to make sense of it all. From nearly every angle of life, we have these messages. Buy this, look like this, act like this, identify like this, talk like this, fight for this, come over to this side, find the meaning of life over here or over there, just not where you are or who you're with and with what you have right now. Something always has to change, progress, or prepare for what's next. It's like there's some invisible hyperloop to life. And while we race around the circle, many of us earnestly stretch out our hands, grasping for success. And every once in a while, we actually feel it, or get a sample taste. But what exactly are we tasting? How could we possibly define success properly under these circumstances? With all this questionable training in the rearview mirror, do we even stand a chance of defining something so seemingly important with the vast number of flawed inputs over such a long period of time? I've said before that you need to be very careful about how you choose to define success. Because if you define it wrongly, you'll either be chasing the wrong thing or something that doesn't exist altogether. And need I say that both of those results will grossly underdeliver on their promise. I want to tell you something that will be easy to hear, maybe even easy to believe, but hard to live out. Success is not defined by what you don't have. Let me say that again. Success is not defined by what you don't have. If you define success by making a list of things you don't have, you're simply letting a list of wants and desires be the driving force for whatever your direction your life is going. Now, you may be saying, hey, my list is needs, not wants. Well, I would argue that you don't need as much as you think you do. I'll share a story about needs in just a minute. As for your list of wants, here's the problem. Your wants are fickle and easily manipulated. And not only that, I feel confident you can think of things you wanted in the past that you finally got, only to find out that it wasn't what you really needed. Or worse, something that was actually bad for you. It's like our own inner voice is broken, because quite often it feeds us a lie. If success was truly defined by what you don't have, then please understand you'll never get there. Because the list of what you don't have doesn't shrink with time and resources. It grows. And the more you have, the more it grows. So be very careful listening to that inner voice when it starts off a sentence with, I want, or even I need. Because all too often, we chase after what we want with great ambition without ever truly asking why. I suspect at one time or another, somewhere along the way, you and I just outsourced the definition of success. I think we did this because we first overcomplicated it, but it also changes over time. And because we so often don't take true ownership of what we're doing or decisions we make, we outsource it. We listen to the inputs around us. And maybe you have some wonderful people in your life. I hope you do. But their voice just typically isn't as loud as the world around you. So we subconsciously accept these other inputs from sources unknown, and we shape our own definition of success out of what we're fed by people, many of whom are distant and don't really have our best interest at heart. So we come up with bullet points like being financially independent, rich, or a fancy title, fame, power, the admiration of our peers, or maybe it's an image we aspire to, or finding that husband or wife, 2.5 kids in that perfect house in the perfect neighborhood. And though we don't write it down, we've carefully crafted our very own detailed, flawed definition of success. So for now, how about we take our eyes off the word success, because unfortunately, that word has been hijacked to a place that may just be beyond repair. We just can't get the image of success that the world has given us out of our heads. It's baked in. Truly, we need to unbake the cake or uncrack the egg, but we can't. So what we really need is a new egg and a new cake, a new understanding. Let me simplify this for you. Instead of focusing on success, maybe consider these three other concepts, three that I believe to be the critical ingredients to success. The first is happiness. Simple enough, we all want that, so let's start there. Because deep down we tell ourselves that once we acquire success, finally then, we'll be happy. So honestly, success isn't really what we want, it's happiness that we want. And if I lined up 20 different leading psychologists, all of whom spent their entire career studying happiness, they would all tell us tiny little variations of the exact same thing. They would tell us that there are three major life items that will decide your happiness. Number one, the quality of your close relationships. If you haven't yet, you should take a look around you and see who's there. Your inner circle. The people you spend the most time with. The quality of those relationships will impact your happiness far more than anything else. Some of us need to learn how to say no. No to those we need space from. The number two item affecting your happiness is a fruitful job or hobby. Or should I say, seeing the fruits of your labor. Work is dignifying. Period. And I really don't want to drag politics into this, but you know what's infinitely more satisfying than a stimulus check? A job. Seeing the results of your work breathes life into your soul. Seeing the fruits of your labor is far more powerful than you can imagine. If this part of the package is missing from your life, then chances are you're trying everything you can to cook up a life of happiness without the second most important ingredient. And number three is simple. It's helping others. That's it. Short and sweet. So let me ask you, how often do you find yourself helping others? I think one of the great secrets to life is that giving is more satisfying than receiving. I say it's a great secret because most of us have heard that before, we just choose not to listen. It's kind of in one ear and out the other. I admit it's counterintuitive, but when you give, you're helping others. And one thing that happiness experts all agree on is that giving and helping others does miracles for your own life. So that's happiness, the assumed byproduct of success. But let's press pause and reflect for a minute. Did you catch that 2 out of 3 of those items are about others? Yet how often do we live our life day after day with ourselves at the center? We wouldn't say that out loud, that it's all about us, but that's exactly how most of us live. We're professionals at looking out for number one. And if that's the beat we march to, there's actually no chance of happiness, which ultimately means you'll never feel successful. There will always be something missing. But understand this, happiness ebbs and flows. We're not robots. Happiness can be stolen with just a phone call and can be returned with a smile. Happiness happens to us. It's more external. That's why it can come and go so freely. And because happiness ebbs and flows, we need to consider something more stable. What lies underneath that desire to be happy? It's probably not something you think about very often, but it's down there. It's the feeling of contentment. My guess is you don't consider contentment nearly as often as success or happiness. This might sound crazy, but being content is a choice. It's not something you obtain. You can't purchase it because it's not for sale. But something more powerful in your life than happiness and success is something that is simply a choice. I'm not saying it won't take some work, but being content is completely up to you. No one can give it to you. You want to move closer to contentment? Stop focusing on where you're not and on what you don't have. Instead of putting so much weight on what is next, maybe consider what is now. There's a story of a man who always dreamed one day that he would retire to his favorite place on earth. It was a remote island where he could fish every day and enjoy the view and live simply. Finally, after finishing top of his class in college and retiring as a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, at 65 years old, he moved to his dream home, which was on the water, where he could fish every day and enjoy the view. He met a neighbor who was a native who lived there his entire life. He asked the man what he did for a living. The man replied, "I've lived here my entire life. I'm a fisherman and I'm saving money so one day I can send my kids to school in America so they can be successful." Now, there's a lot you can interpret from this story, but don't miss this. It's two people spending the majority of their life focusing on where they're not. Here's the deal. Deep down, underneath success, underneath happiness, what you really want to be is content. And it's simply a choice. A choice that takes work, but nonetheless, a choice. And once you are able to choose contentment, you'll find that it's far more stable than happiness. And lastly, there's a byproduct of contentment that deserves your effort and focus, even more so than happiness and success. It's joy. See, happiness happens to us, and success is of the world, but joy is of the soul. Happiness is worn on your face, but joy is worn on your heart. Joy runs much deeper than happiness, and it's more powerful too. Joy is like a fire that burns from within. When you choose joy and choose contentment, you've laid a foundation that better fosters happiness. But happiness is on the outside. So instead of just focusing on how the house is painted, maybe pay attention to the foundation and the quality of the build. On a good foundation of contentment and joy, you'll find that happiness magically happens a lot more often. Remember I said I'd share a story about needs? Well, here it is. The year was 2007. Katie and I had just had our firstborn, and we had, and I'm not kidding, about $6 to our name. She resigned from her job about a month or so before we had our first baby, and things were still pretty small with my own company. I was making tens and tens of dollars. We had a small house that we got on some zero-down stated income loan, and finances were razor thin. We had one heavily used car between us. You know what I needed, or what I thought I needed? Money, more of it. Health insurance, that would have been nice. Better clients, a second car. I literally rented a car for like $40 to go to a meeting across town that I knew if went well, it could put another $2,000 to $3,000 in our bank over the next 3 months. I really can't even tell you what all I wanted back then because everything was perceived as a need at that point in time. There were times we wouldn't hang out with friends because the gas money to get to and from was just too much. Want to see something crazy? Our 2007 tax return. I still have it. Look at this. $0 for wages. Business income, 33 grand. Adjusted gross income, 22 grand. And guess what? We still owed over 3 grand in taxes. This still blows my mind to this day. The poverty line in Dallas, Texas for a family of 3 is $37,000 in income. We didn't have anywhere near that. We were literally living grossly under the poverty line. 22 grand in AGI, 3 of which was about to go out the door to the IRS. But here's the thing. We were just as happy then as we are now. Do we have more stuff now? Absolutely. Are all of our needs and wants met? Yes, for better or worse. Did any of that move the needle on happiness, contentment, or joy? Not even one iota. I know you think you need more. I know you probably want more. But unless you're living 10 grand under the poverty line, I don't even want to hear it. I've been there, done that, and couldn't even afford the t-shirt. Now, let's circle back. Success. How can you define success so it's something that actually matters? Sure, there may be a financial component to it, but let's be realistic. Don't set up the fool's goal of just being rich. For one, you'll find soon, if you haven't already, that you can't measure rich. And it's a terrible goal that grossly underdelivers on its promises. I'll tell you this, if you can pay your bills and take a couple weeks off a year, you've already made it. The financial component at least. Anything you make past bills paid and a couple vacations a year is on the downside of the bell curve. So how can you set up your goal for success with contentment and joy at the foundation so that happiness is more common than it isn't? Step 1, stop focusing on where you're not. Break that lifelong habit now. Focus on and appreciate where you are and develop an attitude of gratitude. Step 2, stop focusing on what you don't have. The world is hard at work teaching that you need more of everything. Label it the lie that it is. The world is full of miserable rich people and they have a lot more than everyone else. So if having more truly solved anything, there wouldn't be so many rich miserable people running around. Step 3, perhaps take your eye off what the world says success is and write your own realistic, meaningful definition for you that's built on a foundation of contentment and joy. Because I promise you, if you let the world define success for you, you'll never get it. I mean, no chance. Because it's not even there. It's just a mirage that's been carefully crafted to extract everything of value from you. No need to let Hollywood, Silicon Valley, Wall Street, or Instagram define success for you. They don't know you, and they sure don't care about you. On the contrary, consider surrounding yourself with people that want something good for you and not from you. Because remember, the quality of your close relationships is the #1 item affecting your happiness. If you're holding on to a hand of bad cards, it might just be time to reshuffle the deck. And look, you can do this. Real true success is within your reach. Don't let the world around you define success for you. Make it something you define, for you. Set real goals and get to work. Think, decide, start. Make good choices, learn to say no. You go off and build a house on joy and contentment, and success will be racing to get to you. Hey, thanks for watching, y'all. If you made it this far, give this video a like and a subscribe and ring that bell for me. That way you'll be notified when I release more videos. Take care, y'all.